so excited. This is my mother, my rock star mother. And she has taught me to be like many of you people here, to be people who critically analyse the world around them and who question whether everything is as it seems or whether there are interest and players at bay. Now, Beatrice isn't your average baby boomer. In fact, my family's quite left-wing. This is probably because my family had to escape from Uruguay to Australia to escape a military dictatorship. And to kind of illustrate how she's shaped me, for my first book parade, which is where you get to dress up as your favourite character from a book, most girls went as Disney princesses. I, on the other hand, was dressed in a full sari to represent the use of child labour in the Sri Lankan tea industry. When it came to my first day of high school, my mum dropped me off, and then outside in her, I can't do a South American accent, but imagine, dropped me off and outside screamed to the car, "Tatiana, always remember to question authority." So yeah, while I'm not maybe as radical as she is, I still have a passion for understanding if the world is as it seems. And that's what drove me to study political economy. And it was in my study of economics that I first came across this guy. Now, this is Milton Friedman, and if you don't know him, his ideas have been hugely influential in the areas of privatisation and free market economics. And it was when I studied him that I came across his idea on the social responsibility of business. Because for Milton Friedman, the only social responsibility of business is to increase profits so long as they stay within the rules of the game. And what that means is that they engage in open and free competition without fraud or deception. For those who are a bit more critical, you might wonder whether or not the world actually operates this way and whether big businesses abide by these rules. I was quite critical because when I thought about big business, I thought about companies like Enron. Now, of course, they're an example of using fraud and deception, but I questioned whether or not better regulation would have prevented a fraud scandal like that, or whether it was inevitable that we'd be dazzled by their management style and their huge profits. When I thought about big business, I thought about people like Nestle. Now, Nestle got a lot of slack for their advertising of infant formula as a substitute for breast milk in developing countries. Now, was this within the rules of the game? Maybe, maybe not, but it seemed like it was unethical or unjust given the circumstances they were in. And when I thought about big business, I thought about Nike. Now, their method of outsourcing manufacturing to developing countries is not outside the rules of the game. But when you're operating in a context where countries are unable or unwilling to provide minimum labour standards, and there's a risk of sweatshop and child labour in your supply chain, then that's a problem with the rules. And when I was studying economics, I thought there could only be two conclusions you could get from this. Either big business was evil, or what I thought more likely was that the rules of the game weren't working. Indeed, and what that means is that they're either flawed or they're unable to deal with the complexity of delivering profits and meeting the needs of global markets, while also meeting the needs that we have as a society and for the environment. So, it only took then the collapse of the global financial crisis to reiterate my point there. And I started to go on my long life journey of understanding if there was a better way. Is it inevitable that we're going to have a market that is profit at all costs, at any cost, or is there a way that we can also serve the environment, society? So at this time, this is when I first came across this concept, a new one, it's quite mainstream right now, and it's called corporate social responsibility, or CSR. Now, it's kind of a new black. Corporate social responsibility, in essence, is that businesses must also consider the impact on the economy, the environment, and society. So it is new and it is different. For those, that could be a good thing. It means that they could have a legal license to operate, but also maybe a social one as well. It could mean, building trust with communities, attracting better employees, managing risk more effectively, and hey, perhaps differentiating themselves in competitive markets. But for those who are a bit more critical, you might see a bit through this smoke screen and see that it was actually greenwashing and maybe a way that they're trying to influence or avoid regulation. So, corporate social responsibility. Let's have a look at it and let's see if it's working. Let's take the example of Starbucks. Now, when you think about Starbucks, what is it that you think about? Is it overpriced coffee? Is it some guy who can't write down your name correctly? My name's Tatiana, it's not Titiana. You might also think about tax avoidance. And of course, we've all come across this. There have been claims that they are trying to avoid tax within the EU. So this is a potential negative economic impact that they're having. This is a Wall Street Journal article. On the same day, we have a Forbes article saying this: Starbucks to shell out $250 million on funding college education for their employees. Now, this is employees both in their retail and retail arm and in their corporate headquarters. Why would Starbucks do something like this? Well, it could be because a better educated and happier employee creates a better service, important for a service-driven industry like Starbucks. It attracts the best talent to their company, fantastic narrative for their loyal customer base, and perhaps it aligns with their company values. So this is a positive impact that they have. Negative economic impact, positive social impact. So it's a bit confusing. Let's take another example though. Let's take Walmart. Now, Walmart, they're the people who own Asda in the UK. Walmart for many years has encountered criticisms of their treatment of their workers. There's been problems in terms of their labour conditions, inadequate healthcare, forced overtime. So that's a problem. And that's really significant for a company that employs 2.2 million employees. That's nearly about to overtake the amount of Chinese military personnel in the world. So that's big scale in terms of the potential negative social impact that they have. But Walmart is also one of the biggest companies in the world with a large supply chain. And with a large supply chain, what you get is leverage, and what you get is the ability to have incremental impacts. So when Walmart decided that they wanted to reduce water consumption and said to their suppliers, like Procter & Gamble, hey, we want you to reduce water in your laundry detergents by 25%. What that resulted in is Procter & Gamble actually making that jump and saving over 200 million litres of water in the US market alone. So consider that impact, multiply that by multiple suppliers, and multiply that by multiple products. So the potential for that incremental change is massive, potentially a huge positive impact on the environment versus a negative social impact. So, is it working? Well, corporate social responsibility, I guess it is working to some extent because it means that you can't just consider profit. It's now expected that a big business will have a social responsibility or sustainability department in their company. No longer is it okay just to consider shareholder value. But as these two examples show, there's a lot of grey area here, and simultaneously you might have a company doing a positive impact and a negative impact. Actually, what's happening though is that Starbucks and Walmart are the good examples. Increasingly what we see is companies looking for the quick fixes and the quick wins. They're doing things like implementing internal recycling programs, employee fun runs, and the huge red flag, if you ever see it, is CEOs getting big charity checks and having them give them across to poorer people. Doing that instead of looking at the real impacts and strategic things that they should be concentrating on in terms of how they make their products. Because what this builds with us is a sense of distrust, because then we look at these commitments and we question their genuineness. Because ultimately, we know now that it's not about how you spend your profit, it's about how you make your profit. But we're actually now at a new stage of social responsibility, and there's a huge movement coming. It's one term that if it's the only one that you take today from me, it is this one, CSV. Creating shared value, because this one is the game changer. What CSV does differently is that it looks about how you can make a profit, but also how you can meet an unmet social need. The scholars who introduced this, Kramer and Porter, started from had the starting point that corporate social responsibility definitely was not working, and the problem was that it put CSR and social responsibility at the periphery. What CSV does is different because it puts social responsibility into strategy, into the way that businesses make their profit. And it looks for the win-win situations for companies, for society, and for the environment as well. So, how are we going to be able to distinguish between CSR and look and find real examples of CSV in practice? Well, let's take two. Firstly, Nestle, the people who I talked before that weren't so good in terms of their social impact. Now they're leaders in the area of CSV. What they've done is that they've liaised with their coffee farmers in Latin America and in Africa in order to improve the yield and productivity of their crop. What they're trying to do is more effectively source the coffee that they need to produce the Nespresso capsules. This means that they are sharing better farming techniques, providing value inputs such as plant stock and fertilizers, helping them secure bank loans. And what this means for the business is a more secure value chain and a more secure way that they can procure high yields of their product. Importantly, what this means for farmers is breaking cycles of poverty and insecurity. Now that is procurement transformed. Let's look at another example, Unilever. Now Unilever's project Shakti in India is fantastic. What it does is that it takes underprivileged women and uses them for distribution, going to areas that they would never be able to go to before. What this means for the women is a doubling of their household income. What it means for the community is actually a reduction in communicable diseases as people are able to better access hygiene products. And importantly, back to business, for Unilever, it means that they're able to have more distribution, and this project now accounts for 5% of their profits in India. So that's substantial. So let's go back to our friend, Milton Friedman, and the only responsibility of business, which is to make profit so long as it stays within the rules of the game. Well, what we've seen now is that corporate social responsibility has changed the rules of the game. It's no longer okay just to consider shareholder value. Businesses, and particularly big businesses, have the expectation that they consider their impact on society, the environment, and the economy. So, CSR has changed the rules of the game. But CSV is going to be the game changer because what it does is it takes it back to business. It takes it back to the creation of value. It's just that in this way, making a profit is also beneficial for the society and the environment. This isn't wishy-washy, and it's not about being a good business. This makes good business sense. And for all the challenges that we have to deal with today in terms of tackling climate change, feeding billions and providing clean water, breaking cycles of poverty and creating sustainable jobs for today and tomorrow, we need big business on side. And this is where CSV has its true potential to get businesses on board. Because while CSR, corporate social responsibility, changed the rules of the game, CSV, or creating shared values, has changed the rules of profit. Thank you.